Like, do you have any advice for people to like really start to live the now moment?
Well, first of all, being aware. If you are thinking about your past, call awareness to it. Call that out. Say, okay, you know what? I'm not in my now right now. I'm thinking about the past, or I'm worrying about my future, which really, the future is just bringing the past forward and saying, okay, I think the same thing is going to happen again. That's why we worry about the future. The truth is there is no such thing as a future, and there is no such thing as a past. If you, for example, tell me about something that happened in the past, say you tell me, Natalie, that something happened to you in the past, and you talk about it a month ago, and then you talk about that same event 3 weeks later, the rendition that you tell me is going to be different based on how you feel. So the truth is, it's really just your interpretation of an event that's gone. Right? If you have a car accident, for example, a police officer sees 5 witnesses and says, okay, write down what happened with that car accident. You're going to get 5 different stories.
For sure.
Because it's based on their interpretation, based on their experience, based on what they consider to be, someone might say, oh my God, the sound of the crash was huge. I felt it. And the other person might say, well, it's just a little bump. Right? And then, the police officers will say, well, were they all the same accident? My God, this is so different. So really, there is no such thing. It's just your interpretation of what the past makes you feel like in this moment. So again, if you were to describe an event to me today and then describe it 3 weeks from now, chances are it's going to be a lot different depending on how you feel. If you had an argument with your boyfriend, you'd be describing it in a very negative way. If you won the lottery, you'd be describing it in a very positive way. So our moment affects everything, even our so-called past. So it's just a memory and an interpretation. So to understand that, so to your comment or your question, is to understand that, is to call yourself out, it's basically when you're in ego time, when you do that. So it's basically to call it out and say, okay, I'm in my past right now, I'm not in my moment. As soon as you do that, that moment of awareness transcends, brings you right into the now and creates space. That actual act of doing that creates space, because now you've called it out, okay, and it's gone, so you've created some space for the presence, for the now to come in. Okay, and that's all you have to do. As you keep doing it, it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you notice more moments of being in your now, and that's when you notice synchronicities happening in your life. And you may go down a completely different path as you start to follow that. It actually happens to you. You don't happen to it.
Wow. So now, do you help people to do this?
Yes, that's what SHIfT. When I went through my transformation or my awakening, as I was going through it, interestingly, as I was going through it, I had a voice, a teacher beside me, who basically spoke with me as it was happening and said, this is what's happening, this is what's going on, this is why it's happening, and this is what it's going to do, this is the effect it's going to have on you. So that I would basically log that information and write that down, because my purpose is to share this with other people in a way that can help people transform their lives. There are many ways out there, but this is one of them. Yeah.
Okay, so how does it? Do you do it in a course?
I do.
Or how does it? Can you? What happens? Should people?
There are 2 ways that I do it, and that is what I call working group and one-on-one mentoring. And this is relatively new. This happened to me at the end of 2008, and I gave my first working group then, and then after that, I went through a ton more changes where I just kept receiving more information and assimilating and integrating into my being and getting more information, and have been kind of in hiding, dealing with all of that and learning how to apply that and learning to bring that out to the world. Mm-hmm. So the working group now has changed. It's now a little more intense, and the purpose has gone beyond just ourself and more into a global and unity consciousness. So it's about stepping out of ourself and no longer about being ourself as in all of us in mm-hmm. one self, basically, mm-hmm. for lack of a better term. And so it's expanded upon that. And so what I do is I offer working groups and one-on-one mentoring. Now the working groups are kept to a limited group of people, 10 to 14 people, and we have what we call a buddy system, where people partner up so that they can call each other. It's like an 8-week course, and people call each other during the week, and there are certain exercises and certain tools that they're given, and then we come back every week, we discuss, and then we move on to the next one, and then the one-on-one mentoring is basically being the buddy for them, and it will only change as much as you allow it to change you. You'll only get out what you put in.
Why do people? Why isn't everybody? Why don't people? Some people obviously don't make that shift or don't get it or something, right?
Right.
What are they holding back on?
Fear. Total 100% fear. But they're unconscious of the fear. There are some people who it's very overwhelming. It's very, very scary. It takes a warrior-like attitude to do this kind of work. I did have one girl who I met with, and we had a 2-hour conversation, and I left her with the information, and then she called me back and she said, "Oh my God, this is too scary." She took off and went to Montreal. She said, "I'm too afraid. It's like opening up a Pandora's box." And I think eventually she will take it, but she realizes how impactful the change can be, but how much work and how much releasing of her old belief systems.
It's fun because just having this conversation, it doesn't sound like it would be that much work. I'm really curious, what is so difficult about the work? What is the work? What does the work consist of?
The work is examining your belief system. And changing, actually getting rid of your belief system. It's actually deprogramming so that you don't have a belief system anymore. If you have any bit of a belief system, you're not in your now. A belief system is patterns of thought that become so habitual, they're unconscious. That's all a belief system is. So it's basically saying, don't think anymore. Don't become a victim of the patterns of thought. So that's basically what it is. So what do? You actually learn to observe. And from there, what happens is you will find a lot of resistance will come up. And that's where it's very, very hard, because then you have to face these fears, which are your belief system. And you have to let go of those fears. And as you let go of those fears, from within forms without. Right? So the way you create change is you change your belief system, and that changes your outside world. So when you start to change your belief system, things around you start to change. So you may lose your job, your partnership may break up. That all happened to me within 72 hours. Bang, 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 bang. Everything gone.
What was it that was the catalyst for your own transformation?
For me, at 40, I turned 40, and this was 6 years ago. I'm 46 now, but at 40, on my birthday, I had a voice that said, this is going to be a transformational year for you. And I thought this was great. I was still very much in my head, and I thought, okay, I'm going to get a promotion at work, and yada, yada, yada. And within 72 hours, my job was gone. My husband at the time said he wanted to leave, and I lost everything within 72 hours. And that probably was the end result of the change. It wasn't because of that that I had this transformational shift. It was my vibration had already changed, and everything else that was part of my old vibration fell away. So when you do this work, be ready, because your life will change dramatically, and those that are no longer part of your vibration, gone.
Because I think what you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that what's out there in our life that's manifesting to us is actually a product of what's in here. Right? So if we change on the inside, the outside's going to change. So
to your question, if everybody does this, to your earlier question, if everybody makes this change, if everybody quits their job and stops working at the banks and what's going to happen? Do you remember that question? It doesn't matter, because it will change according to your belief system. And if your belief system is that everything is going to fall in place and be just fine, then that's what will happen. See, so individually, we are changing who we are, and when that happens, we start to create a collective change. It only takes half of 1% of the world's population to create a shift. Half of 1%. Positive energy is far more powerful than negative energy. And we are bombarded with negative energy, right? But it only takes half of 1% to create a shift.